Divine Terror, Divine Error, Book 2. Written by Aisha Urooj. Narrated by Ash Kelley. Dedicated to family, both lost and found. Copyright Aisha Urooj, 2022. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced or used in any manner without written permission of the copyright owner, except for the use of quotations in a book review. Prologue. I am Damon, former heavenly angel, now working in hell. In case you are wondering, no, I didn't lose a bet or anything like that. The reason I'm here is that I didn't quite fit in heaven, my former place of work. Mine was a work transfer, unprecedented in the history of eternity. Never was it done before, not willingly at least. So how did I end up from heaven to hell? If you just joined my story, it all started when I got redeployed to Earth as a representative for a heavenly mission. The redeployment was a punishment, or perhaps more likely, a diversion, used by my heavenly manager so that I didn't bother him when I got bored, which was often. Perfection breeds inertia and boredom. I felt out of place each day among the other, more perfect angels. Perhaps redeployment wasn't a bad idea. Heaven sent me to Earth with Saynt, a demonic co-worker, to help guide Joe Smith, the hapless human. Saynt was a nervous demon co-worker that needed even more help than Joe, which was pretty bad considering our unfortunate human was having an existential crisis. More worryingly, for our managers at least, the human's moral compass was stuck in neutral. They sent us to tip Joe Smith's neutrality to favor one side or the other. Somehow, we had to fix him, and this divine error. So, were we successful in our mission? Maybe. It depends on how you look at it. Individually, both Saynt and I failed miserably in our earthly task. Saynt couldn't damn Joe's soul to hell, nor could I salvage it for heaven. Together, however, we were the most successful angel-demon duo in heaven-hell history, much to the shock of our managers. Joe's life turned around for the better. In fact, we were too good an influence on him, and that caused another problem. Thanks to our meddling, guidance, Joe reached a state of nirvana and could soon be able to ascend or descend to heaven or hell. Before that could happen, however, our managers quickly took us off the mission. Joe's dull life finally changed, but ours did too. Seeing this opportunity as a godsend, sorry about the pun, Saynt and I negotiated and won our current work contract, which brings me back to hell. Saynt, the demon, now works for heaven. I now work in the highest realm of hell. It wasn't what we thought we wanted at the start of our missions, but oddly enough, it was what we ended up choosing. Now that you know about what happened, let us move on to today. Chapter 1. Life in Hell. It has been 15 short years since I last saw Joe Smith, or Mr. Whiskers, his terrible cat. Mr. Whiskers must be an ancient cat now, if he hasn't already departed to heaven. I'm sure Saynt, newly anointed patron angel for cats, would be happy to see him. At least someone would be happy to see that spoiled, smug-faced feline. I don't miss his judgy looks and hateful hisses at all. I've been doing well in my new place of work. Work, in hell, I found, was a loose and broad term which encapsulated very much of it, or mostly very little. Sure, there was busy work, idle work, procrastination that looked like work, meetings to prepare for the actual meeting, mountains of work piled on the subordinates by the superiors, and a coffee break to celebrate an order well given and authority maintained. That is what the workflow is like in hell, or any office on Earth, really. They gave me an assistant, a demon with an unfortunate name of Wheezy. Like every morning, I asked him what was our plan for the day. "So what do we have scheduled, Wheezy?"
"Yes, Mr. Demon,"
Wheezy replied with an eagerness that was endearing.
"We have the 3:13 meeting postponed to 6:56, though there is a petition started for it to be scheduled at 6:66. The 4:20 meeting has been rescheduled to never, or maybe tomorrow. The 11:11 meeting has been..."
Wait, Wheezy. I told you not to call me Mr. Demon, I say. It is Damon.
"But it says Mr. Demon in your file, Mr. Demon," Wheezy replied. "You requested a name change?"
It is true. I requested my name to be changed to Demon, thinking that it was an original idea, I say ruefully. I changed my mind when I saw that every third being here was also someone named Demon.
"Oh, I see. Yes, I see a name change request to the name change request issued 14.9 years ago. Still processing,"
Wheezy said, scratching his nose.
"I will file a notice right away, and we should resolve it within 6 years or so."
Splendid, I replied with no sarcasm. I was only biting down my tongue because I liked Wheezy, odd as he was.
"So, Mr. Demon, what do you think about the 3 a.m. meeting?"
Before I could answer, true to his name, Wheezy wheezed and gave a big sneeze. "Bless you," I said, automatically. Immediately I realized how wrong I was. Wheezy gave a small hiss and a small cry at being blessed. "Sorry, Wheezy," I apologized. "I didn't mean to. It's an old habit."
It's all right, Mr. Demon,"
Wheezy said in a quiet voice.
No harm done. Not physically, anyway, though I would have preferred it."
Wheezy was one of the lower demons. They were a sad, masochistic, self-deprecating bunch. The higher demons, however, were as smooth as marble on the surface, as jagged and cruel as pointy rocks on the inside. As per contract, I didn't have a manager to report to, but I still had to deal with other VPs on Hell's Council. I'm still not sure if that was an improvement from before.
"You also have a meeting with Lord Handsome,"
Wheezy reported. Wheezy looked closely at his notes and his eyes became wider.
"Oh my, it seems we have cancelled all other meeting slots. You only have the meeting with Lord Handsome today."
Wheezy was terrified of Lord Handsome. I saw him bite his claws nervously. Lord Handsome had a talent for getting inside a being's mind. Manipulation and torture were his specialty, which he used freely on the lower demons. "Don't bite your claws, Wheezy. It's not hygienic."
"What is hygienic?"
Wheezy asked, confused.
"I'm not familiar with this term, Mr. Demon."
Clearly, you won't be, I thought. This is hell, after all. Here, hygiene was not even an afterthought. "Never mind, Wheezy," I said. "I will go see Handsome now. I refuse to address him by Lord. You can take the day off." Wheezy gave a terrified look, perhaps at the thought of meeting VP Handsome, or perhaps at having the day off. He scuttled away quickly, with his clipboard in tow, toward his cave. I offered Wheezy a place, but he preferred his dark, smelly cave. To his credit, it was more cozy than my mega mansion could ever be. As Wheezy left, I wondered, what was Handsome up to now? What did he mean by hijacking all my meetings? Chapter 2. VP Handsome shares some news. I created an instant animosity with Handsome when Lucifer, or Satan, or head honcho of hell, praised the work I did on Earth. VP Handsome, who had been working his way up over many millennia, was clearly incensed. How dare a newcomer steal his prized spotlight? Or at least that's what I thought happened. VP Handsome was very good at manipulation, so his intentions, like everything else about him, were hard to decipher. He was easily one of the worst demons in hell. "Hello, my friend Damon. How are you this fine morning?" Handsome greeted me warmly. Friend. Ha! The saying, keep your friends close and enemies closer, immediately popped up in my mind. Handsome, my demon. I am well, I replied. What have you planned for us today? I heard from Wheezy that you'd taken over the day's schedule. I hope I interrupted nothing too important, Handsome asked innocently. This was a trick question, meant to both spy and to troll. What could be more important than meeting VP Handsome? I said, adding my most charming smile. You flatter me, my most charming friend. Nothing gets past you, Handsome. So what mind games, fun, had you planned for us? Nothing much, really. I just wanted to talk. This rang alarm bells. It was a much more dire situation than I thought. I would have felt better if Handsome wanted to play golf and cheat to win again. Just talk? I asked, a little skeptical. Yes, pardon me, Handsome replied with a sigh. It can get quite lonely in hell, without many intelligent beings around here. Wouldn't you agree? Talking to Handsome was like walking through a minefield. You never know when you would walk on one and get blown up. I gave a non-committal answer. I wondered if you had heard the latest rumor from Earth. He was getting closer to his point now. I could feel it. I can't say that I have, I replied. Your network is faster than mine. I said network, but in reality, I only meant Wheezy. That can't be true. We are both VPs, though you are a more recent addition. A most wonderful addition, he added, lying unnecessarily. I wondered why Handsome enjoyed lying so much. We both knew how much he hated my being there, and being the new favorite of Satan's. What have you heard from Earth? That they have found another hard, almost impossible to turn human, Handsome said. You supervised the last one, of course. Who was it? Toe Myth? Handsome knew perfectly well that the name was Joe Smith. He just enjoyed trolling in his own special way. Who is the new human? I asked. I didn't catch his name, but my sources are calling him a little terror. We will have a council meeting soon regarding it, and I wanted to give you a heads up. You are my special friend and all. As if. More like Handsome was telling me this because I would volunteer to go. He hoped he could get rid of me from hell, and this was the perfect solution. Question was, would I go? I must confess, it already intrigued me. Thank you, Handsome, I said. You truly are a friend. One I should appreciate more. Don't mention it. Don't mention it at all. Really, Damon, you didn't hear the news from me. Hush, hush, Handsome said, putting one elegant finger on his cupid bow lips. I expect you might need the day to digest the news. Farewell, Damon. I am off preparing myself. I will see you at the council at midnight, unless you want to stay and have lunch together. The lunch last time had pickled demon on the menu. I got an unpleasant image of Wheezy being slowly roasted over a barbecue pit. It's all right, Handsome, I replied quickly. Thank you for the offer. I think I should prepare for that midnight council meeting. See you then. Handsome didn't want to tell anyone that he was the one who broke the news to me. He knew I might take the offer, and it might upset Satan to see me leave for this mission. Handsome was nothing if discreet, especially with power and politics. Handsome's animosity started when Satan started favoring me. His animosity grew when I got a seat on Hell's Council as a member. When Lord Handsome lost the most chiseled chin contest, that was the moment he unraveled completely. Handsome had been winning the contest for ages until I, as a lonely newcomer, swept in and won the title. The judges declared me to have, and rightfully so if you ask me, the most chiseled chin in all of hell. That is what truly hurt Lord Handsome. Jealousy can be ugly. I know. I've seen her without her morning coffee. Handsome gave in to his inner green monster wholeheartedly. Still, despite everything, I looked forward to the council meeting. All the VP council meetings were like going to hell in a handbasket. The one tonight, especially, was going to be an interesting one. Chapter 3. Hell's Council. The 13 VP council members, minus Satan, would meet at midnight for the council meeting. Saynt was sitting this one out as his forecast warned him to avoid lengthy discussions. All the other 11 council members arrived on time. Myself, of course, being the 12th one present. Fury was wearing a velvet orange suit that clashed with his red skin. Guess no one mentioned it to him. Envy had a classy green silk suit, the same shade as her eyes. She was pleased to see others being envious of her style. It was the effect she wanted, nothing less. The Lust and Desire twins wore barely their dresses of silver and gold. Their older sister, Vanity, sparkled in diamonds, wearing even more rings with even larger diamonds than the last meeting. Hell's High Council was, on most days, a free-for-all, do-as-you-please, high-octane brawl, and today was no different. Handsome, like always, was fashionably late. He liked to make a dramatic entrance. "Hell's honor is on the line," Handsome's voice thundered as he entered the council room, with his black cape flowing dramatically behind him.
"What is this council about?"
Anxiety asked in a high-pitched voice.
"Who is this new and terrible human on Earth that neither heaven nor hell can influence?"
"That is horrible," said Disgust with revulsion. "For shame," said, shame. "No one can influence them? Have they tried all the options?" Khan asked, trying to work out a strategy. "How about promising them endless wealth and power?" "We could torture them," suggested Torture. Usually, it was his first solution for every project. The second idea being, you might have guessed, more torture.
"But which council member goes to Earth?"
Anxiety asked, biting his nails. "That is an excellent question," Handsome said. "Who will go on this most important mission indeed?" Handsome looked towards me discreetly. That was the moment he was waiting for. "I nominate myself to oversee this mission," I said, using my most authoritative voice. I didn't say volunteer, as that word would have caused quite a reaction in the council, especially from Shame and Disgust. "VP Damon shouldn't get all the glory," Handsome started. "It doesn't seem fair that the newest VP member get this important mission. This is about Hell winning over Heaven. Hell must get all the glory," I said, interrupting Handsome's spiel. "I am sure the council would rather go with someone who has experience in the matter. Sincerest apologies, but that is not you, VP Handsome." Handsome hoped that I'd be the one to go. What he hadn't expected was being humiliated while I did so. Two birds with one stone, such are the ways in Hell. "Your ambition is laudable, Damon, but it is hardly the place for it today," sneered Handsome. Believe me, I wasn't even trying. My response generated a few chuckles from the council members.
"Damon, I wouldn't have doubted your place here if I hadn't already known where you came from," Vanity said. "You almost fit perfectly in Hell." You all forgot the most important question,
said Lust and Desire. "Which is?" Handsome asked, getting impatient.
Are they hot? This terrible human. Who do they look like?
Cooed the twins together.
We must know. Are they like our Damon?
I smiled at their eagerness. Desire gave me a slow wink, showing off his winged eyeliner. Lust pouted her lips and blew me a kiss. Their attention to me only enraged Handsome further. Handsome was seething now. "Who agrees with me?" Handsome asked the other council members. "Now is not the time for Damon to be interfering."
All I heard was a lot of anger and barely contained resentment,
Envy said with a sly smile.
Have you taken the roles of both Fury and I, dear Handsome?
Ouch. Handsome wasn't as popular as he thought himself to be. He backstabbed more than a few of the council members, and they never let go of a grudge. He even got rid of the former 13th member. That was before I came.
How do you feel about this, Fury?
Envy asked with a slight smile. Fury slammed his fist on the table, making us all jump. He gave a crooked smile, his eyes blazing as the table broke in half.
None of us will be deciding, Apathy said in his monotone voice. You forget who makes the final approval in hell. Or should I remind you?
There were murmurs of grudging assent among all the members to what Apathy said. So, the consensus was that Satan was to decide.
Do we write the proposal in red ink or black? I forgot,
Anxiety said, panicking.
Does anyone have extra pens?
Anxiety shouldn't have been worried. He forgot they wrote the proposal in blood, not ink. The demon used for the blood ink giggled when the needle pricked him. He was delirious by the time the last words on the proposals were written. I gave him a blood orange from my complimentary VP basket at the council's table as he left the council chamber. He clutched at it for dear life, stumbled through the doors, and smiled goofily. That night, the council sent the 13 proposals out to Satan. We had agreed that he was the final vote, being the president. That concluded the council meeting. Torture lamented that no one even died this time around. Chapter 4. Satan. I wanted to say goodbye to Cerberus before I departed for Earth. I got him in my contract. Rather, I should say that I won him with my contract. When Saint and I were told of the divine error, which got us to where we were, we had a choice to make. We either accepted what meager offer our managers were offering, or demanded for more. I worried Saint would stay mum, but we would be stuck with whatever the higher-ups had planned for us. Luckily, Saint displayed a rare act of self-preservation and spine, and we got exactly what we asked. I asked for Cerberus, and I got him. Cerberus lived on the Barren Lands. Every place in hell was barren, but the Barren Lands were more so than the others. Lava streams surrounded it. Only demons that could fly could cross them, and only the hardest of plants or plant-like trees could grow here. The giant dog destroyed the rest. Cerberus would flatten anything in his path. The acid rain took care of the rest. I saw demon bones piled in the corner, so Cerberus must have recently eaten. He didn't yet bury the bones. With a full stomach, he might listen to what I say to him about protecting Wheezy. To say Cerberus was a giant dog was an understatement. He was the size of a mountain. Even if I called him one dog, he had 3 heads. The first head started barking as soon as he saw me. The second head started slobbering all over me in excitement. The third head was busy catching its tail. I named all 3 heads. The first was Alpha, for obvious reasons. The second was Max, as it was the closest dog name I could think of. The third I named Dudley, or Dud for short. You might think it was a mean joke by me, but it was the only name he would respond to. Alpha! Max! Dud! I called. All 3 dog heads turned their attention to me. Boys, I'm going to Earth for a visit and won't return for a while, I said. Take care of Wheezy for me. Don't eat him until I get back. Actually, don't eat him ever. Do you understand? The 3 heads gave a deafening, earth-shaking howl that echoed in the Barren Lands. I assumed they understood. I will miss you guys. Alpha, Max, and Dud all whimpered most piteously.
Saying goodbye to Hell's favorite hound, are we?
Said a familiar voice. It was Lucifer. Actually, it was Satan now. The first time I called him Lucifer, he had broken into a magnificent laugh. I quickly became his favorite. Another fallen angel. Although technically, I was still an angel who was just in hell. Yes, I wanted to say goodbye to Cerberus before I left for Earth.
You are still adamant you want to go? He said. I can send any other useless demon.
I laughed. It was good to be a favorite. I picked up one of the large bones that Cerberus had cleaned out and tossed it in the distance. He shot past me, his paws thundering and leaving a cloud of dust behind. Each dog head trying to be the first to fetch.
I would advise you to stay away from those things, Satan said, looking at his fingernails. The further away from your thoughts and feelings, the better.
What things, Satan?
Those humans, he said. I don't trust them.
It was rich hearing that Satan didn't trust humans. I didn't laugh, though. Satan had a strange glint in his eyes. He wasn't done with the topic.
They are not to be trusted. At least I chose a side and stuck with it, he said with a sneer. Those vile humans are forever flip-flopping from one side to the next. They call it morality and conscience. Liars! They just want to get away with everything. They spend their entire lives sinning and tormenting, and then ask for forgiveness and mercy when it is their time to pay. But try as they may, they will pay.
You don't like them at all? I asked. The ground tremored, and the clouds thundered just then, but they did not prepare me for what came next. A heavy darkness swallowed everything around me, and I turned blind. There was a chill in the air. Satan's voice changed to a deranged hiss. It echoed everywhere. I could hear him in my thoughts.
You can lie. You can cheat. You can kill, maim, and torture. But there is one rule in hell. All humans are to be damned, he said. Their souls will rot. Their flesh will decay in hellfire. They will be here for eternity and more. They will pay for what they did. They will pay for what they are. No demon will rest until the human souls are mine. I want them all in hell. Every last one of them.
I gulped. Wouldn't that take a long time, especially with heaven sending their angels to guide them?
I am patient. I will have my revenge in the end,
Satan said smoothly. His voice returned to normal, and I could finally see again.
They will stay with me for an eternity, and I will show them what they actually deserve.
Satan gave a bone-chilling laugh. My hair stood on end. He smoothed the lapel of my jacket.
Don't get too attached to them, Damon,
Satan warned one last time.
You don't want to start liking those disgusting humans?
Noted, Satan. I have learned much from what you said.
Attaboy, Damon, he said. Go complete your mission, and come back to me. Make hell proud, or I will feed you to the vultures.
I laughed at his joke, or at least I think he was joking. I will do my worst, I said, and added a wink. Satan gave another maniacal laugh. It disturbed the evil-looking vulture demons that had gathered on the scraggly bushes nearby. The ugly birds left once Cerberus came back, barking at them from half a mile away. Chapter 5. Earth is Hell. Was this Earth? I had to check my location again just to make sure. Raging pandemics, forest fires, hurricanes, mass extinctions of animals, unprecedented level of strife, division, and hatred, lootings, terrorisms, and murders, politicians that were like hell's sleazy sales agents. If I didn't know any better, I would think I never left hell. I saw a familiar figure in the distance, and I knew I was in the right place. I ran and gave Saint a good-natured slap on the back. "Hey, my buddy pal Saint," I said. "How are you? Haven't seen you in a minute." Saint grimaced and said, "We're technically not pals. We are colleagues." His words shocked me. This was not the greeting I expected from friendly Saint. What happened? What did heaven do to him? What exactly are we then, rivals? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Bitter foes? Enemies to the end?
Those are such harsh terms,
Saynt said, fumbling with his answer.
If it makes you comfortable, we are colleagues on opposite camps,
he said, trying to find the right words.
We are here on a mission. We will follow the set of rules and regulations, and once we are done, we can go our separate ways in amicable terms.
He gave a smile that was a little too bright. Nothing about this new Saynt was going to make me comfortable. So my colleague Saynt on the opposite camp, do you have any intel on our assigned human? I asked nonchalantly. I asked him knowing that he wouldn't. Heaven didn't have the rumor mills like hell did. I know because I used to be in heaven and prayed desperately each day for any gossip.
I heard nothing,
Saynt replied.
Do you know anything?
What are friends for? Let me fill you in, I said, returning his earlier smile. Hell's tabloids are calling the human a divine terror. From the information that I have, it seemed likely that our human is a despot, a tyrant, a dictator, or all three. My bets are on the president running the country. He's shady enough and looks like a prime candidate.
I see. He could be,
said Saynt, scratching his head. He looked a little like his old clueless self, before heaven turned him into a law-abiding, fact-checking, no-fun drone. I tried to coax him back into his old self. Remember the last time we were here, Saynt? How good it was for us? Saynt was lost in thoughts.
Things are different now.
How so?
I am working for heaven,
Saynt said. And that changes things?
Yes,
Saynt said in a low voice.
For once, I have clear instructions on what to do.
He was talking about the heavenly protocol. I had memorized each line of the hefty document by heart, mostly through repetition. Most days, I wanted to chuck it out into the void. Fine, I see how it is, I said. Internally, I vowed to convince Saynt when he was more susceptible. Let's go see this human we were assigned. There was a ping, and a folder appeared in both our hands. Inside the folder, there was a single page with a few sentences. Your assignment, human, Joe Smith. Location, somewhere, someplace, Earth. Cause of concern, TBD. Proceed with extreme caution. Joe Smith? Both Saynt and I said together. I looked at his paper, and he had the same information as me. Both our papers had misspelled Joe's name, too. We are seeing Joe again, I asked, puzzled. He is the divine terror?
That means I will see Mr. Whiskers,
Saynt said in excitement. I groaned. Not that cat again. Anything but that furry, grumpy, stuck-up feline. Did something happen after we left? I asked. Joe was doing so well.
I will ask Mr. Whiskers,
Saynt said.
He will tell me everything.
Of course he would. It took us another second to appear in front of Joe's home. Joe had moved here with Jane when she agreed to be his girlfriend. It was the same as before, just decorated with a few more plants and potted flowers. We noticed an angel-demon duo standing in front of the front yard. There you two are, they said, their voices shaking. Please take care of this. She is a nightmare. We are out of here. They didn't even give us a moment to ask questions before they vanished to their respective realms. How bad was it? I had to wonder again. How odd, I said. She is a nightmare? I thought it was Joe.
Maybe we have the wrong information, or someone else lives in the house now,
Saynt suggested. There's only one way to find out, I said. We go in. I braced myself. I saw Saynt was holding his breath. As soon as I stepped onto the front porch, a hissing sound greeted me.
Mr. Whiskers!
Saynt exclaimed. The traitorous cat purred and wrapped itself around Saynt's legs. Same cat, I said with disdain. Do we have the same human too? We heard someone's voice from inside the house. Joe, can you bring Mr. Whiskers inside? We need to take him to the vet soon. I heard a grumble, and then someone came out of the door. It wasn't our Joe, though she looked like a mini copy of him. It was a small girl, around 12 or 13, and she was looking directly at us. Chapter 6. The Other Joe. I must be mistaken, but there was something unsettling about her looking directly in our direction. First, we are, or should be, invisible to any human. Do you think she's staring at us? I asked Saynt. That's not possible, Saynt said adamantly. Do you think she's our assignment? I said, scratching my head. I certainly didn't expect this. What did you expect? Definitely not a preteen. Someone older, I said, and more tyrannical. You guys are weird, Joe said. Well, weirder than the last two that were here. Saynt nearly fainted with shock. I had to keep myself from doing the same. There was another steadfast rule in both our realms. Humans should not hear us. They can hear our advice or suggestions as the voice in their heads, never as a voice in their ears. So far, Joe broke two essential rules. Our millennials' old order system was unraveling before our eyes. You can hear us? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Unfortunately, yes, Joe said. She looked towards Mr. Whiskers and said, Mister, you heard Mom. Get your butt inside. To my utter shock, Mr. Whiskers purred lovingly and sat in front of Joe for a head pat. I tried not to feel slighted at being the only creature hated by this stupid cat. Joe glared at Mr. Whiskers and said, I don't pet traitors. Maybe the mission won't be so bad after all. Meow, Mr. Whiskers said, what I presumed was, defensively. Saynt chimed in. Mr. Whiskers said that what he did was for your protection. I just wanted to meet my best friend in her treehouse, which is just across the street, but you brought my dad, Joe said. She pointed to the treehouse. Well, that was quite a decrepit-looking structure. Yeah, Mr. Whiskers said again, batting his eyelashes. He's saying that it wasn't safe, Saynt translated. My best friend has been in that treehouse 1,000 times and nothing happened, Joe said. You just don't want me to leave the house, just like Dad. Meow, Mr. Whiskers protested. Mr. Whiskers is saying, Saynt said, but Joe cut him short. I don't want to hear his excuses, Joe said, and I certainly don't want you translating for him. She glared at both Saynt and Mr. Whiskers before going inside. They both looked devastated. I was the only one left with a big grin on my face. Much as the turn of events delighted me, it left me with a dilemma. Great job, Saynt, I said. This is very bad, he replied, shaking his head. It's just a small girl, I said. How bad can it be? I feel awful for Mr. Whiskers, Saynt said, petting the cat. Mr. Whiskers' ear and tail dropped sadly. After his children moved out to their new homes, and his girlfriend, Princess, passed away, Joe is the closest thing he has to a child. I didn't want to, but I felt bad for the cat. But thankfully, the feeling passed quickly. Well, he brought this on himself, I said. He shouldn't have tattled on her. Mr. Whiskers hissed loudly, so I hurried out of scratching range. No matter, I said, gaining back my composure. We have a mission to complete. Do you think she will talk to us now? Saynt said. She might not talk to you after your display of solidarity with that traitorous cat, I said. But I see no reason why she won't talk to me. Besides, I know exactly what will make her open up to a conversation. What's that? Talking about her dear old dad. Sounds like she has a lot of grievances to air, I said, smiling deviously. Joe Smith will be my ticket. Jane took a reluctant Mr. Whiskers to the vet. while Joe was nowhere to be seen. There was a closed door at the back of the house where I heard someone typing furiously, so I presumed he was working there. His daughter Jo was in her room upstairs, and the door was slightly ajar.
"Can we come in?"
Saynt asked, peeking in with one eyeball through the crack of the door.
No,
said Jo without looking up from her book. She was reading 1984. Interesting. A little heavy read for a 12-year-old. I bumped Saynt aside with my hip. Look, my friend got off at the wrong start. But surely you won't say no to me. I didn't even do anything, I said, and I dislike Mr. Whiskers as much as you do. Saynt gasped. Jo looked up briefly and then returned to reading her book. Why are you here? She asked. I felt encouraged. This is why we are here, to find out. Do you know why they sent us to your dad, too? Her head snapped up quickly. Your dad's angels, too? She asked with curiosity. Yes, I said, nodding. Can we come in? It's hard to talk through this little gap in the door. Fine, she said. She stood up from her chair and opened the door wide. I will give you 2 minutes. Great. That was 1 minute more than what I needed. I went through the door and Saynt followed me quietly, staying in my shadow. Wise decision, really. So how do you know my dad? Jo asked, crossing her arms in front of her. We were assigned to him 15 years ago, just before he met your mom, I said. Back when he was different, I suppose, Jo said. Mom said he was spontaneous and adventurous. Now he's so boring. He just works all day. He was a hard worker then, too, Saynt said quickly. He didn't have a very nice boss, though. I don't get why he has to work so many hours, Jo said. Dad runs an online business from his home office, but he hardly leaves his room. Was he different than when you met him? Not at first, but he changed once we suggested he do things differently, I said. So they sent you just so he worked less? Jo asked. Is that why you're here now? No, his moral compass was stuck in neutral, so we came to nudge it to one side, I replied. What about me? Both Saynt and I shrugged our shoulders. Something is off because you are not supposed to see or hear us, I said. How can anyone not see you? Jo exclaimed. You're what, 7 feet tall? 6'6", with 13 feet in wingspan on each side. Not that I measured. We are not even at our full size. Get out, Jo said, her eyes wide. Saynt immediately headed towards the door. Where's he going? Jo asked, looking at Saynt. No idea, I said. Saynt blushed, finally realizing Jo didn't mean to get out literally. Damon's always changed color with his mood, Saynt added randomly, probably to hide his earlier embarrassment. What color are they normally? Jo asked. Are they red now because he's mad or because he's evil? They are purple, Saynt said. Violet, thank you very much, I said. Red is the color du jour in hell. Isn't it always? Jo asked. Yes, well, I said, avoiding her astute observation. We will probably have to stick around until we find out the source of this predicament. Why would I agree to that? Jo asked. If you help us help you, you will not have to deal with seeing or hearing another angel-demon duo in the future, I said. But will they still be there? Jo asked. Yes, but as mere thoughts or suggestions, I said. Not in-your-face corporeal physical beings. Okay, I can definitely see the benefit of that, Jo said. You can stay. But I have a few rules. Sure, Saynt said. He loved rules. I rolled my eyes at his enthusiasm. What are your rules? I asked. 1. You will give me privacy when privacy is needed. 2. You will stay quiet when I am doing my homework, Jo said. Most importantly, 3. You will never, ever eavesdrop or read my thoughts. The last one is impossible in our line of profession, I said. But seeing Jo frown and then walk towards the door, I added, But since this is so important to you, We will try our best not to do it on purpose. You only get one chance, Joe said. Follow the rules or disappear. It's a deal, Saynt said. It's a deal, I said more slowly. I had no intention of following all the rules, especially the one about eavesdropping, but I wasn't going to tell them that. Joe, dinner will be ready in 10 minutes, Jane called from downstairs. Doesn't it get confusing which Joe she's calling? I asked. Is she calling you or your dad? It doesn't matter, Joe said, shrugging her shoulders. She knows it will reach either and we will tell the other. I couldn't help but how clever and efficient Jane was. So are we done for now? Joe said impatiently. Almost. We will just have a quick look at your moral compass, I said. Saynt cleared his throat. What is it? I asked. Saynt whispered in my ears. She is too young. Her moral compass is still developing. Oh, right. What I meant to say is, we will have a quick look at your life scale, I said. My what? Joe asked. Life scale. It weighs all your good deeds and bad ones over the course of your life, I said. Will it hurt? Joe asked. Not at all. There might be a few uncomfortable moments of staring, perhaps, I said, smiling. Then I looked at Saynt. You can help me any time now. Yes, of course, Saynt said solemnly. He conjured a pair of glasses and wore them quickly. What are those? Both Joe and I asked together. My glasses for deep thinking or greater introspection, Saynt said. Whatever his reasons were, he looked goofy in them. I narrowed my eyes at him and shook my head. Never mind him. I will look first. I tried as hard as I could, but I couldn't see Joe's life scale. It was blurry, and it went in and out of my focus. I heard Saynt gasp. Those glasses of his must work then, I thought with irritation. I'll take those, I said. I snatched the glasses from his face and put them on mine. A small gasp escaped my lips. If Joe's scale was accurate, then I didn't even need to be here. I could just pack up and leave right now to hell, victorious, not lifting a single finger. Joe's life scale was the most lopsided one I had seen, and it weighed heavily towards the bad side. I had seen nothing like it. How was this even possible for a 12-year-old? So? Joe asked, getting nervous about our reactions. What do you see? Thankfully, Joe's mother called again before I could answer. Look, your mom's calling, I said. Why don't we talk about this after dinner? 'Kay, Joe said, looking suspiciously at us, as both Saynt and I were smiling broadly. We waited until she was out of her room and down the stairs before we broke our cheesy grins. What will we do now? Saynt exclaimed. Why is his scale like that? I don't know, but I, unlike you, don't have to do anything, I said. What? Why? I could just leave right now, I said. Saynt looked thunderstruck. Surely you won't. Why not? Because it could be wrong. This is unfair to the child, Saynt said. Not just any child, but Joe Smith's. He had a point. Joe had always been my weak spot. Even if I stay, what am I going to gain from this? You should find out why she can see and hear us. Perhaps that will solve the life scale problem too, Saynt said, thinking quickly on his feet. If you left now, you will never know, nor will you be able to catch up on Earth's TV dramas. I hated that Saynt knew me so well. I was a sucker for solving mysteries and Earth's TV dramas. Fine, I said. I will stay until we find out, but I am not doing anything about the life scale. It's a deal, Saynt said, absent-mindedly. He seemed worried. If I were in his position, I would be too. This mission looked like an easy victory for hell. Chapter 7. The Guilt Trip. Jo was a diligent student, and after dinner she went straight to finishing her report that was due in a couple of weeks. Jo didn't even ask anything about what we said to her. I still couldn't understand the numbers on her life scale, But the more time I spent with her, the more confusing it became. She was a mini version of Saynt, perhaps with a little more attitude. It took Jo a meticulous hour, but she was done with her work. Instead of being happy with completing her project on global affairs, Jo was miserable.
"Is the world going to end soon?"
Jo asked. I looked at Jo with surprise. "Why are you asking this?" I asked.
"It feels like it's going to happen soon,"
Jo replied.
"What made you say that?"
Saynt asked with angelic concern.
"Don't you see all the bad things that are happening in the world?"
Jo asked instead.
"Things are horrible right now. There will always be bad things happening. But good as well," Saynt said. "We are proof of that, and your mom and dad."
"Leave it to Saynt to drag me along with him and the others."
"My dad, he doesn't get me at all," Jo said. "Sometimes it feels like he doesn't care about anything else except work."
It seemed Jo had been bottling her feelings up for a while.
Ah, the precursor of teenage apocalypse. A clueless parent. "It must be hard for you," Saynt said sympathetically.
"Sure, whatever," Jo said, putting her wall back up. "None of this matters if the world is going to end."
"I don't think you should worry about all that,"
Saynt said soothingly.
I sighed.
"Saynt, she's not looking for pretty phrases, but an answer," I said.
"So the world is going to end soon?"
Jo asked, her eyes open wider. "I feel it will happen soon," I replied truthfully. "It has been building up for a while, and we are dangling just at the cusp of it."
"Will it happen because of a major event?" she asked.
"No, it will probably happen because of something small and stupid," I said.
"Like what?"
"Like someone not covering their mouths when they sneeze," I replied, bored.
"That's disgusting," Jo said.
"Yes, they should be more considerate," Saynt said solemnly.
"They should really use a handkerchief."
"A handkerchief?" Sometimes I wonder what millennia Saynt was still living in. "You are singularly special, my angelic friend," I said to Saynt. Saynt beamed. Saynt still didn't get sarcasm. That is why he was smiling like an angelic idiot at my compliment. Jo looked at Saynt and shook her head. I kept forgetting she could see us, which wasn't good. I hope she doesn't take it upon herself to explain to Saynt what sarcasm was. Jo stood up to grab a report from the printer. She was trying to hide the front page, but I saw it anyway. "Josephine Smith?" I said, trying not to choke on laughter. "Your full name is Josephine?"
"Is it really?"
Saynt asked, his eyes sparkling.
"It most certainly is not," Jo said, frowning. "Josephine makes me sound ancient. Why couldn't my parents name me something cool, like Taylor or Zendaya?" "I think it is a lovely name," Saynt said, unrelenting. "It suits you so well."
Jo groaned, while I chuckled some more. "So, Josephine."
"No way you are calling me that," Jo said, huffing. "I have a new rule. You can only call me Jo."
"I'm afraid that rule wasn't agreed to in our initial agreement," I said casually. "As such, we are not bound to comply with it." Jo was silent, but then she said, "What would you like in exchange for it?" Will you let us read your thoughts?" I said.
"No deal," Jo said.
We were at an impasse, but I didn't call her Josephine again. I enjoyed irking people, but only at opportune times. Otherwise, it lost its impact. I was wrong, though, about Jo being done with her homework. She still had more to do. Since Saynt couldn't keep his mouth shut any longer, Jo banished us out of her room. We had little choice but to go downstairs. We found Jo's mom, Jane, on the living room sofa, reading a book with Mr. Whiskers snuggled to one side. Her expression showed she was reading a horror or a juicy romance. I might have to check that out later. Jo's dad, Joe, walked out of the kitchen with a giant sandwich in his hands, likely as a light after-dinner snack. Mr. Whiskers gave him an affronted look at being excluded, which made Joe break off a piece of chicken and give it to the greedy cat. "How's Mr. Whiskers' health report?" Joe asked with his mouth still full.
"A perfect score, according to the vet," Jane replied.
Mr. Whiskers gave a smug look. If he keeps it up, he may live to 50.
That's my Mr. Whiskers, Joe said proudly. He is the most perfect cat.
Saynt nodded furiously. Jane's eyebrows furrowed. She looked at Joe with concern.
Joe, you forgot again.
Joe froze. I could see his mind working at light speed. He quickly went through the usual suspects: birthday, anniversary, Valentine's, but none of them matched. What did he forget? His wife sighed.
Joe hoped you would help her with her homework.
Oh no, Saynt mouthed. Is that why Joe was so miserable earlier?
Was she mad?
Joe asked.
No, she didn't say anything, but I think she's giving up hope of being able to spend time with you,
Jane replied.
I fear that is much worse than being angry. Just a few more weeks until this project is done, I promise. Then I will have enough money for her surprise,
Joe said.
It will be all worth it. Once it's here, we can have much more father-daughter bonding time.
Wouldn't it be better if she knew what you were working so hard for? Jane asked.
I know you want to keep it a surprise, but maybe you could drop a hint or two. Just a little more time, Jane, Joe promised. I promise she will love it.
I hope you're right, Jane said. Interesting. What was Joe saving up for? Joe gave his wife a kiss and Mr. Whiskers a pat on the head before disappearing into his office again. Jane looked at Mr. Whiskers, who was cleaning his fur.
Looks like your dad will work past midnight again, Jane said. I have an early shift at the library tomorrow, so I'm off to bed.
Jane took the book with her to the bedroom, but Mr. Whiskers stayed rooted to the sofa. Saynt quickly sat beside him and started fussing over the cat. I rolled my eyes. A thought popped into my head about what the vet said about Mr. Whiskers' health report. Saynt? I asked.
Yes, Damon.
There was something strange about Mr. Whiskers, I said. Saynt huffed in anger. Well, the closest thing he could get to being angry, which was being mildly irritated by my words.
Mr. Whiskers is not strange. He is a very nice cat,
Saynt said. Mr. Whiskers glared at me, but I was used to it by now. I rolled my eyes. I didn't say that Mr. Whiskers is strange, though he is a very mean cat. But there is something strange about him. I looked closely at the horrible cat. How old is he now?
15 1/3.
Why are you asking this? Saynt said in a casual tone, but I noticed that his voice was slightly higher.
Cats can live to be 25 years old, or even longer.
Yes, I am aware they can. However, they don't live that long with perfectly good health, I said suspiciously. And his appearance and health is annoyingly perfect for such a horrible old creature. Saynt was stunned into silence, and Mr. Whiskers growled threateningly. I swear, I saw Saynt sweat a bit.
You have always been against poor Mr. Whiskers,
Saynt stuttered. Mr. Whiskers meowed in agreement. And you are being awfully defensive about him, even more than usual, I said. I suspect you did something.
I did nothing,
squeaked Saynt. OMG, you did something, didn't you? I said. Perfect, rule-abiding Saynt broke a sacred heavenly law? Saynt blushed deeply.
So what if I did? It's not harming anyone,
Saynt said.
Are you going to tell on me?
No, that is not my style, I replied. But I will hang it over your head, or I might use it as future extortion. Saynt's eyebrows shot up to his forehead. That is the hellish way, my friend, I said.
So you won't report Mr. Whiskers?
Saynt asked. Much as it kills me, no, I won't, I said. Stars were shining in Saynt's eyes as he rushed to hug me. Mr. Whiskers rolled his eyes this time. Okay, sheesh, I said, tearing Saynt's arms off me. No need to hug me to death. Saynt chuckled.
You work for hell and are an ex-angel. Death is not in the cards for you.
But Mr. Whiskers still is, and that works out to be the same, I said with a sigh. Mr. Whiskers was sharpening his nails on the sofa arm and staring directly at me.
I didn't break any sacred laws, Saint mumbled.
Excuse me? I asked, surprised.
I didn't break any laws for Mr. Whiskers.
I raised one eyebrow. And I am just to believe that cat was blessed with an unusually perfect health?
No, you are right there, but I didn't break any laws, Saint said. He cleared his throat. I asked for a bonus on the deal we made with our managers.
Last time we were on Earth, we negotiated our contracts. I asked for Cerberus, but I hadn't considered that Saint asked for something too. What did you ask for?
I asked for Mr. Whiskers to have perfect health as long as he lived, Saint replied.
But wouldn't he continue living if he had perfect health? I asked, narrowing my eyes. Saint stayed silent. You sneaky ex-demon, you found a loophole, I exclaimed. Does that mean Mr. Whiskers is immortal? Mr. Whiskers gave a haughty expression to show he had never doubted it.
No, but as long as he remains careful, he can continue living as he does, Saint replied with a smile.
Great, I replied sarcastically. Just wonderful. I am happy for you.
Damon?
Yes, Saint?
What are we going to do about Joe's life scale?
Saint asked, worried. We? I said, scoffing. I am going to do nothing.
But why is her scale so...
Saint fumbled. I believe the correct word would be evil, I replied. I have no idea. I don't know why her life scale looks like it belongs to the spawn of Satan himself. We both heard a gasp from the kitchen and turned quickly to see who it was. Joe was standing there, open-mouthed.
Joe, we didn't see you there,
Saint exclaimed.
What are you doing here?
I came to get a glass of milk, Joe said in a small voice. It helps me to go to sleep. Did you hear what we were talking about? I asked. It shocked me that we didn't sense her presence. Another thing to add to the list of things not working. I might have heard something, she said. Her tone had an inflection towards the end. What exactly did you hear? I asked. Just that I might be pure evil, Joe said casually. Then she added a sigh.
I heard everything. We were going to tell you, Saint said defensively.
When exactly? Soonish, I said. Whatever, my life is crap anyway, Joe said.
This is the afterlife we're talking about, Saint said like an idiot.
I smacked my head.
Fine. Life, afterlife, it's all going to be crap, Joe said, tearing up. I'm going to sleep.
Good night. Don't forget to brush before you go to bed, Saint said.
She stopped and glared at him.
What if I don't? Would you add that to the scale too? Joe asked, mad.
We heard her angry footsteps going up the stairs, and then the shutting of a door. I looked at Saint and shook my head.
What?
Saint asked. That was not the right thing to say right now, I said.
I was just trying to be helpful,
Saint said in a small voice. Well, you helped make her angrier, I said. I moved towards the sofa.
What are we going to do now?
Saint asked. Me? Nothing, I said.
What about Joe?
Remember rule number 1? I said. Joe said she was going to sleep. She will probably want privacy.
Since when do you follow rules?
Saint asked, shocked. I shrugged my shoulders. I wouldn't have to do anything for this mission, so I might as well catch up on some shows. Saint was quiet, and he remained quiet for a long while. I was busy watching late-night telenovelas, and it was just getting to the good part, when I felt 2 sets of eyes staring at me. Both Saint and Mr. Whiskers stood beside my sofa. What is it? I asked. I'm busy.
Mr. Whiskers and I want to talk to you about Joe, Saint said nervously. We have a question to ask you.
What question?
Do you really want Joe to go to hell?
Saint asked. I can't answer that, I said.
If you don't do anything, that is where she will end up,
Saint said. I remained quiet. I can understand you asking this, but why is the cat here?
Meow.
growled Mr. Whiskers. He glared and slid out his claws threateningly. Do I want to know what he said? I asked Saynt.
Well, I can't repeat what he said,
Saynt said, blushing.
But if you don't help Joe, Mr. Whiskers promised lots of violence.
Are you going to threaten me too, Saynt? I asked.
No, I won't, Saynt said. But I am asking for your help.
What if I refuse? I asked. It was a real possibility. If I didn't win this mission, Satan would feed me to the vultures. I couldn't see how Saynt could convince me to change my mind.
You will have to decide, Damon, Saynt said. Either you work for hell alone, or you help me with Joe.
Or what?
Or I can't see you as my friend any longer,
Saynt said sadly. I was stunned. Ever since we met, Saynt was desperate for our friendship. Even if he was acting as the pawn of heaven, secretly, I felt he still wanted us to remain friends. I couldn't believe it, but Saynt's statement hurt me more than the threat of violence from Mr. Whiskers. Chapter 8. Runaway. Mr. Whiskers was snoring on the sofa, and both Saynt and I sat quietly. I lost all interest in the telenovelas, though they were great, with phenomenal acting. I hated that there was this awkward silence between the two of us, so I started talking first. Saynt? I asked. Thankfully, he answered,
Yes, Damon.
Don't you think humans are so... They are so what? He asked. Frustrating, I exclaimed. Saynt surprised me by agreeing.
Yes, they are.
And complicated, I added.
Yes, that too.
And all their day-to-day dramas are so riveting, I added.
I think the same,
Saynt replied. It is, as the humans say, watching a train wreck and not being able to look away.
Most definitely,
Saynt said, vigorously nodding his head.
But I think you wouldn't want them any other way.
What do you mean? I asked, puzzled.
You like the drama.
Maybe, I replied.
You like that they are hard to figure out.
I shrugged my shoulders.
And most of all, you like that they are flawed.
Why would I like that? I asked Saynt.
Because both you and I know we are too,
Saynt replied.
We don't fit in where we are supposed to.
We don't? I asked. Then where do we belong? Saynt gave a grim smile. You think we fit here? On Earth? With these flawed, contradictory, frustrating humans? I asked.
Yes.
Once again, Saynt stunned me with his words. Saynt's simple admission hit me like a wall of bricks. His words rang true. Perhaps we belonged here? Look, Saynt, I'm sorry about what happened earlier, I said. I don't want to lose your friendship.
Oh, good. Me neither,
Saynt exclaimed.
Are you going to help me now?
Yes, I'm going to help you, even if Satan feeds me to his vultures, I said. I'm sorry that Joe overheard our conversation.
Poor Joe, he said. What do you mean about Satan's vultures?
Never mind that now. We will make things right with Joe in the morning, I said, and see why her scale is acting like that. Saynt nodded. Early the next day, Joe didn't give us much of a chance to talk. She gave us the cold shoulder as she got ready for school, and then she had breakfast alone. Her mom had gone off to work, and her dad greeted her once before disappearing into his office. Joe slung her backpack and headed out of her home. Mr. Whiskers was conspicuously absent. Perhaps he was still napping. We followed Joe quietly until she reached the school grounds. But instead of heading inside, she walked towards the bus stop.
Joe, the school is that way,
Saynt said, pointing to the red building.
Why are we standing here?
I'm going to catch the bus, Joe said. You can stop following me any time. Where are you going? I am going far away, Joe said curtly. You're running away from home? I asked. No, I'm not running away from anything, she replied. I'm going to see Grandma and Grandpa.
Do you know how to get to their place?
Saynt asked. I never used the bus to get there before, but I'll figure it out, Joe replied coolly.
You could get lost,
Saynt exclaimed. I don't think you should worry about me, Joe replied. "It is better if you leave." "You want us to go away?" Saynt asked, crestfallen. Joe nodded and looked away. "Okay, if that is your wish," I said slowly. We walked away, but Joe didn't look back at us, even once. Saynt was torn about what to do. I took Saynt to one side and said, "She's upset. We should give her some space." "But she could get lost," Saynt said. "We shouldn't leave her." "We will stay close by," I said. Saynt nodded. Joe got on the bus and briefly talked to the driver. We followed the bus as it kept going and going. Finally, after several hours, Joe was the last person to get off the bus stop. She looked around, seeming lost and confused. It didn't look like it was the right location. She asked a few passing strangers, but many ignored her or gave her a sharp reply. "Where am I?" Joe said to herself. "I don't recognize this place at all." That was our cue. "We are still here," I said. "Do you want to talk now?" "No," Joe replied. "You have nothing nice to say." Fair point. Joe then searched her pockets, but couldn't find what she was looking for. She was blinking back her tears. "What's wrong?" Saynt asked. "I forgot my phone," Joe replied. "Perhaps we can see when the next bus will get here," I suggested. "You can ask the bus driver for directions." Joe seemingly ignored my suggestion, but after a few minutes, I saw her looking at the bus schedule.
"The next bus won't be here until late at night," Joe said, upset. "What will I do now?"
"Why were you going to your grandparents' house?" I asked.
"They always make me feel better," Joe said in a low voice. "I know they love me, no matter what."
Saynt was in tears, and I felt bad too. "Joe, I know why you're so upset," I said. "We made a mistake."
"You said I was evil,"
Joe said. "Were you lying?" "We wanted to talk to you this morning. We believe that something is very wrong with your life scale, not that there's something wrong with you," I said.
"Yes, you are a very nice human," Saynt said. "We would never think bad of you." "Okay," Joe said. "I guess I was upset about it earlier, but I want to go home now. I don't know what to do."
"There are a couple of stores nearby," I said. "Someone must have a phone."
"Maybe I should just ask a shopkeeper or someone if I could make a phone call,"
Joe said. "That is a good idea," I said. Joe went inside the nearest convenience store. It was empty except for the shopkeeper. He was a guy in his early 20s, standing bored behind the counter.
"Excuse me, can I please use your phone?" Joe asked. "I forgot mine and I need to make a call home. My parents will be worried."
"You should have thought of that before you left home," the shopkeeper said. "Phone bills ain't cheap, especially not mine. Buy something from the shop and I'll let you use it."
I surveyed the price tags in the store and saw that everything was ridiculously overpriced.
"But I don't have enough," Joe said. "I only have a bus pass."
"Look, kid, I'm being generous as it is," the shopkeeper said. "Buy something and I'll let you use my brand new expensive phone."
Joe wanted to ask something else, but the shopkeeper turned his back and dialed the number on his phone.
"Hey, Brad, it's Adam. What are you up to, buddy?"
Adam said. After his friend said something on the other side, he replied.
"Me? Not much. I'm stuck looking after my uncle's store." "Why?" "To help build character," as the old man said to my mom. Whatever that meant. It's so depressing. All I see all day are charity cases, and good for nothing.
What an exceptionally vile human he was. His friend said something again, and Adam answered.
"Yeah, I know. Such a waste of my time. I could be making viral videos right now."
Joe went outside and sat on the pavement. Her lips were trembling and tears spilled from her eyes. Saynt was trying his best to cheer her up, but it wasn't working. Joe jumped up, and I could see why. Her backpack was wiggling. We heard a muffled sound coming from inside her backpack. Joe quickly opened the bag zip and out popped a disheveled Mr. Whiskers.
"Mr. Whiskers?" Joe asked. "What are you doing in my bag?" "Wait, were you spying on me?"
"Meow," Mr. Whiskers said. We both looked towards Saynt for a translation. Saynt seemed a little choked up by what the cat said.
"Mr. Whiskers had a gut feeling he needed to be with you today," Saynt said. "Oh, Mr. Whiskers, you are so selfless."
It was nice of the cat, I must admit. Joe stopped crying and took Mr. Whiskers in her arms.
"I'm glad you're here, Mr. Whiskers,"
Joe said.
I think I messed up. I mess up all the time, Saynt said.
When I said nothing, he nudged me. Yes, I mess up all the time, too, I said half-heartedly.
Meow,
Mr. Whiskers said soothingly, and Joe gave him another hug. Saynt was furiously wiping his tears at the happy union. Well, I said, clearing my throat, as nice as it is to have Mr. Whiskers here, unless he brought a phone or cash with him, we still don't have a way to call back home. Mr. Whiskers hissed at me. Apparently he had a solution for that. The cat jumped off Joe's arms and sat squarely in the middle of the pavement. His ample size blocked the path of whoever was passing by. Now, the cat started meowing mercilessly. What is he doing, Saynt? I asked, covering my ears.
Mr. Whiskers is helping, Saynt said proudly.
He is singing an aria de Bravura, the most beautiful one I've ever heard.
So, Mr. Whiskers was putting on a talent show? Talent being a highly subjective word here. Hey, what is the cat doing? People on the street stopped and asked, perplexed.
Mr. Whiskers is singing, Joe said. He has a natural talent for it, don't you think so?
My jaw dropped, but Joe giggled. Saynt was too busy clapping and whistling for Mr. Whiskers. Some people stopped to listen to this horrible screeching. Others quickened their pace. A few of them tossed some coins to the fat cat, mainly to shut him up. Within 10 minutes, Joe had enough money to buy something from the overpriced store. She gave a squeal of delight and squeezed Mr. Whiskers again. Joe took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and entered the convenience store again.
Hello, I want to buy this,
Joe said, placing the soda on the counter.
Can I use the phone now? I really need to call my parents.
I'm still on the phone, the shopkeeper said with irritation. Why don't you get me a coffee while you wait?
What?
Joe asked, surprised. A coffee from across the street, Adam said, handing her some money. Make sure it's a skinny vanilla latte with soy milk, an extra shot of espresso. Don't mess it up. He returned to his phone. Mr. Whiskers looked like he wanted to end him.
It is one last thing, then I can call Dad,
Joe said to soothe the cat.
Come on, let's go.
Joe got Adam's drink from the coffee place. It was packed with busy people who wanted to be caffeinated 20 minutes ago. No one had time for a lost 12-year-old girl and a grumpy cat. When Joe returned to the convenience store, Adam was finally off the phone. He handed the phone to Joe, took the coffee from her without uttering a single word of thanks or appreciation for it. He was really testing my patience. Joe called home, and we could hear her mom on the line.
Sweetie, where are you? The school called saying you never showed up. Are you okay?
I'm sorry, Mom, Joe said, wiping her nose on her sleeve. I'm okay. I'm just a little lost.
I can't tell you how relieved I am to hear your voice. We were worried to death,
Jane exclaimed. Now it was her dad's voice.
Joe, tell us where you are, and I will come pick you up, Joe said.
Dad, I'm sorry, Joe said, crying. Adam made a small noise at her tears, looking worriedly at his phone.
It is my fault, her dad said. Tell me where you are.
Joe looked at the shopkeeper. Can you please tell my dad how to get here?
Sure,
Adam said with a sigh. He put on a bright voice for the phone. Yes, sir, of course, sir, he said smoothly. We are at... Joe went outside to wait for her dad. He arrived not long after. Joe hugged his daughter, and then Mr. Whiskers, too. He profusely thanked the shopkeeper for his kindness. Please, don't mention it, Adam said. It was nothing.
Can I offer you anything in return? Joe asked. It is the least I could do.
All I ask is that you pay it forward, Adam said, smiling. That slimy weasel. What an exceptional young man you are, Joe said. I owe it all to my uncle. Working in this store helped shape me as I am today, Adam replied. Joe was impressed with his reply, but Mr. Whiskers hissed angrily. Adam looked towards Joe and said,
The world is tough, but today you proved to be tougher, kid.
Then he added a wink.
I am proud of you.
Joe gave a small, polite nod and left with her dad. Mr. Whiskers, however, was not as polite and had a few choice words to say to him. He was being held back by Saynt. Otherwise, I suspect the shopkeeper would have had his face clawed out and shred to ribbons. I didn't say a word, but after everyone left, I twirled a finger and watched with satisfaction as the shopkeeper's skinny vanilla latte with soy milk and an extra shot of espresso spilled down his designer pants. "It's a tough world out there, buddy," I whispered in his ears. "You better wash that out before anyone takes a picture. They will think you wet your pants. You might get viral for the wrong reasons." I smiled at Adam, looked around sheepishly, and then quickly put the close sign on the front door.
Chapter 9. Heart to Heart. We tagged along in the car's back seat. It was a tight squeeze, even with our wings folded. We eavesdropped when Joe talked with his daughter on the drive back home.
"Sweetie, why did you run away?" Joe asked. "Is someone bullying you at school?"
No, it's nothing like that, Joe said, embarrassed.
"School is great."
Then what is it? Please tell me what is bothering you, her father asked, concerned.
"I missed Grandma and Grandpa," Joe said, tears falling down her cheeks. "I wanted to see them."
"I'm sorry. I know you were asking to see them, and I didn't make the time," Joe said. "I feel horrible." "It's not your fault, Dad. You were busy at work," his daughter said.
"I was taking on extra clients because I wanted to give you a surprise," Joe said. "But your mom was right. I should have told you from the start."
"You wanted to give me a surprise?" his daughter asked.
"Yes, I was saving up to buy us a camper," Joe said. "I thought we could take long family trips together, exploring across the country. I should have told you earlier."
"Can we do that? That would be so amazing,"
his daughter said, brightening up. "I thought we could get a brand new camper, but those are expensive," Joe said. "Maybe I was going about it all wrong. We could get a used, good one instead of the one with the fanciest upgrades."
"I don't care how it looks, Dad. I just want to spend time with you,"
his daughter said, making Joe tear up. "Are we going to go camping?" "Before I met your mom, I used to go outside the city to watch the stars with Mr. Whiskers," Joe said, smiling. "Do you remember Mr. Whiskers?" All Mr. Whiskers remembered was having a pleasant dream about fishes. He said, "Meow," and Joe misunderstood it as him agreeing. "Joe, your mom and I might seem busy with work, but we will always have time for you. Your happiness and well-being is most important to us," Joe said. "We love you. You can talk to us about anything, no matter what." "I know, Dad," Joe said. "I love you and Mom, too." When they reached home, Jane was pacing like a tiger on the front porch. She rushed to hug her daughter and smothered her with kisses. Joe was slightly embarrassed when both her parents squeezed her for a group hug. Mr. Whiskers was greeted like a king returning to his castle, which he probably thought he was. He was tired and hungry. He just wanted to have his lunch, and supper and dinner. After things settled down, we went to see Joe in her room. Her door was wide open this time. She was again nose deep in her assignments. "Are we interrupting?" I asked.
"Damon Saynt,"
Joe cried, and rushed to hug us. To our surprise, she could. Not only could Joe see and hear us, she could touch us too. "I'm sorry for being so mean to you guys," Joe said. "Thank you for staying with me even when I was being difficult."
"It was our pleasure," Saynt said. "You weren't a bother at all."
I nodded alongside him. "What are you going to do now?" Joe asked. "We have to figure out why your scale is acting so bizarre," I said contemplatively. "You think it's not working correctly?" Joe said. "What if it is? Maybe I am evil." "I know evil when I see it," I said, smiling. "You are not evil." When Joe raised her eyebrows, I answered with a wink. "It is a common workplace hazard where I work." Joe had a curious expression on her face. "What?" I asked. "Is there something on my face?" "You are more angel now since coming from hell," Joe said.
What made you say that? I asked. Your eyes changed to violet. They are no longer red, Joe replied.
Goodness is so contagious, I said, getting back to business.
But we already examined it, Saynt said, confused.
From a distance, yes, I said. We should look at it even closer.
How?
Saynt said, shocked.
No angel or demon can touch a human life scale without disintegrating. It's against the rules.
No angel or demon alone, perhaps. What if we did it together? I asked. We are quite good at finding loopholes.
Would it work? Joe asked.
There's only one way to find out. We both grab it at the same time. Saynt nodded. He was worried, and truth be told, the idea of turning to angel dust wasn't enticing to me either. Joe was biting her nails nervously. Ready? I asked Saynt.
Ready,
he replied. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, Joe said. We both grabbed the handle of the life scale together. Instinctively, we held out our breath and gave a sigh of relief when nothing disastrous happened. We were both laughing nervously. We're still in one piece, I said to Saynt, smiling.
It seems so,
Saynt said, smiling back. I examined the life scale closely. It looked as it should, with one part manufactured by heaven. The right side was lighter and shinier, and annoyingly perfect. The left was no doubt manufactured in hell, but something was odd about it. A dark aura was surrounding it, and along with it wisps of smoke and dark tendrils beckoning us like ghastly fingers. Joe's scale tipped ominously on one side, the bad side weighing much more. But why? Joe was barely a teenager and had done nothing worse than run away from home. I looked for the manufacturer's info and found it etched in microscopic letters. Manufactured by LH Corporation. Hell. LH, I mused out loud.
Do you know what that stands for? Joe asked.
Of course I did. There was only one VP with those initials.
Lord Handsome,
both Saynt and I said together. I forget, Saynt survived hell for many years. He must have come across Handsome too. I gave Saynt a knowing look. Perhaps you are right about this, my friend, I said. There seems to be another force at play here.
What do you mean? Joe asked.
Who's Lord Handsome? He's a VP in hell.
Who names themselves Handsome? Joe asked. He sounds like an idiot.
He is, I said. The biggest one, I should add.
The scale is definitely corrupted,
Saynt replied.
That explains why it's not measuring as it should. Does that mean that I'm not evil?
Joe asked tentatively. I rolled my eyes. Joe, we had this whole conversation earlier. A riveting heart-to-heart. You are fine, but I have a few questions about a certain VP.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Saynt asked. Yes, I replied. It's time to visit hell and get some answers from Handsome. Chapter 10. A Handsome Solution. Saynt stayed on the outer edge of hell, while I went to the barren lands to look for Wheezy. There wasn't a sign of him anywhere. Not a single cough, sniffle, or wheeze that could reveal his location. A sense of dread was building in my stomach. I saw a fresh pile of bones. I hoped I wouldn't have to find him there. Wheezy! I cried. Where are you? Cerberus heard my cry and came thundering towards me. Alpha, Max, Dud, I said. After giving them a pat, I asked, Have you guys seen Wheezy? Dud stared vacantly. Max shook his head. When Alpha burped, I feared the worst, but then I heard a faint voice.
Mr. Demon, I am here.
It sounded like Wheezy, but where was it coming from? If I didn't know any better, it sounded like it was coming from inside Cerberus. Was Wheezy in his stomach? Where are you exactly? I asked.
I am inside Cerberus,
Wheezy replied. My worst fear was coming true. Did Cerberus eat you? I asked. Are you being digested as we speak?
No,
Wheezy replied with a small, raspy laugh.
Look towards the right ear.
Then I saw Wheezy, standing in the center of Dudley's ear hole. Dud was unperturbed. In fact, he didn't seem to notice a demon had been camping out in his ear for a week. "Why are you there, Wheezy?" I asked.
It reminded me of my home,
Wheezy said as he jumped to the ground. I suppose it was dark, smelly, and cramped, just like his cave. "I am glad you are still alive," I said, sighing a breath of relief.
All thanks to Cerberus,
Wheezy said, and the giant dog wagged his tail, causing a small hurricane. "Any updates since I was away?" I asked.
Yes, you will be happy to know that your name change went through, Mr. Demon,
Wheezy said with pride.
You are now officially Mr. Damon Demon.
Mr. Damon Demon? I groaned internally. Well, it was close enough. "Can you do me a favor, Wheezy, and book a meeting with Handsome?" I asked. "Make sure no one else finds out I am back." Wheezy winced at Handsome's name. "What's wrong? Did Handsome bother you while I was away?" I asked.
No, Mr. Damon Demon, Wheezy said. He sent me a few invites to dinner, but I never went.
Invitation to dinner? Most likely to have him for dinner, I thought. "I will make an excuse for you." "Don't worry about that, Wheezy," I said. "Think you can book a meeting today?"
I will book one right away, Wheezy said. It is so good to have you back, my lord.
"Just my name, Wheezy," I said fondly. "No titles." Wheezy gave a rare show of affection as he lightly tapped my shoulder with his claws.
If it is okay, I think I will go back to my cave now,
Wheezy said after scheduling the meeting.
My home will be such a mess by now.
I doubt that was even possible. "Sure, Wheezy," I said. "I will come visit you soon." Wheezy gave a small cry of delight before dashing off to his home. I felt a warm, fuzzy feeling seeing that Wheezy was well, which was good because I had to deal with Handsome next. "You are such a good boy," I said to Cerberus, who had been waiting patiently and drooling over my shoulder. "Guess what I brought you from Earth?" I tossed him the 50-foot rubber duck I had found in a human novelty shop. All of Cerberus's 3 heads went wild, tearing at the rubber duck's neck. Then they went to dig a hole and hide the duck in it. That duck would keep Cerberus busy for a while, I thought. Handsome arrived on time. "Damon, you are back?" Handsome asked. "Handle the human situation already. I am impressed." "There was a slight change of plans," I said. "I came to ask you a few questions."
"Ask me questions?" Handsome asked. "About what?"
"I discovered that someone tampered with the human scale, and it had your company's logo on it," I said. "Do you know anything about it?"
"How did you touch the scale and stay in one piece?"
Handsome asked, surprised. "Shouldn't you be angel dust?" "I found a way," I said. "You didn't answer my question." Handsome was quiet. "I already know it was you. Might as well tell me why you did it," I said.
"I adjusted the scales to give Hell a slight advantage," Handsome said. "Only one scale activates at a time, so no one will suspect my plan."
"How many scales have you sent out?" I asked.
"So far, I have sent one batch that will set off at different times," he replied.
"You better not send any more if you don't want to be caught," I said grimly.
"How will I get caught?" Handsome said haughtily. "It is the perfect plan."
"There's a slight problem with your so-called perfect plan," I said. "The corrupted scale makes the user see and hear angels and demons. Once word gets out of more humans acting the same way, heaven will find it suspicious. Once they know it isn't a coincidence, there will be a thorough investigation." Handsome was silent, but he was mulling over my words. "What do you think will happen next when heaven discovers hell sends out corrupted scales?" I prodded. "The eternal war will be over, Heaven would win by default. Handsome didn't respond. I sighed. Who will Satan take out his wrath on when he loses? I asked. Handsome paled.
What do you suggest we do then? He said.
Replace the scales before anyone finds out, I said. No one needs to know. Handsome was unconvinced.
Even if I play along, what is it to say you won't tell on me? He said suspiciously.
I had to win over Handsome, and there was only one way to do it. Even if he was a creature of hell, I had to show him good faith first. It is time I told you the truth, I said with a dramatic sigh. I cheated, you know.
What do you mean?
Handsome asked. I swore he knew what I was talking about and was holding his breath. The award? I cheated, I said. After a long pause, I added, I bribed the judges. Handsome gasped. He actually gasped. I clicked my fingers, and the trophy for Most Chiseled Chin appeared in my hands. It shone like a glorious star. This belongs to you, Handsome, I said. Handsome's jaw dropped to the floor. He looked at me and then at the trophy. He was visibly shaken, and tears were gathering in his eyes. I knew. Somehow I knew it, Handsome said as he held the trophy with trembling hands. But you earned it, Damon. You cheated, fair and square. It belongs to you. Handsome was smiling, with tears still gleaming in his eyes. He handed back the trophy to me. Are you sure? I said. Yes, I am sure. Since you trusted me with your darkest secret, I will help you, Damon. Lord Handsome said, smiling. I will get you a properly functioning life scale from the Department of Heavenly Justice and Hellish Comeuppance to replace the corrupted one. That is generous of you, Handsome, I said. I still need to convince Satan to let me stay on Earth longer so I can replace the other scales. I am in a generous mood today. I will do that for you, too, Handsome replied. You will convince Satan? I asked, stunned. How? You forget that manipulation is my specialty, just like lying is yours, Handsome said, winking. You will try to manipulate Satan? I asked. His ego manipulates him every day, does it not? Handsome said. He had a point. What will you tell him? I asked, curious. I will tell him you need more time with the current assignment, that it is proving too tricky, Handsome replied. I will send you a message whenever another scale activates, so you can take care of it before anyone knows. How will you send a message? I asked. It has to be done discreetly. I will use your assistant, that weasel fellow, Handsome said. Can I trust him? His name is Wheezy, I said automatically. Wheezy can keep a secret. It was a good plan. Still, I was curious. Why are you doing this, Handsome? I asked. I know you want to save your skin, but you are doing more than you need to. It is a win-win situation for us both. You get to spend more time on Earth, while I can handle things here, Handsome replied smoothly. Mind you, I can only delay. Satan might call you back any time. I will keep that in mind. Thank you, Handsome. Now, don't say another word, in case I change my mind, Damon, he said, grinning. Now go before Satan knows you are here, or that we have a deal going on. I made a gesture of zipping my mouth, and then gave a polite bow to Handsome. He actually waved to me as I was leaving, and had a huge grin on his face. That worked out pretty well, if I say so myself. Handsome was right about one thing. Lying was my specialty, and lying to him had been a good idea. I looked at the trophy and smirked.
There was only one winner worthy of the title, and I didn't need to bribe any judges. Let Handsome think whatever he wants. I shocked Saynt when I told him what had happened.
You convinced Handsome? How?
I played to his ego, I replied. Handsome got me the replacement scale. We should go back to Joe now. Saynt nodded. Joe was still nose deep in homework when we returned. Sigh. I have a feeling even if it were the end of the world, she would still finish her work. We carefully replaced Joe's scale with the one Handsome got from the Department of Heavenly Justice and Hellish Comeuppance. The scale tilted widely to one side as it adjusted before leveling off. It ended up being slightly heavier on the good side.
Problem solved?
Joe asked tentatively. Problem solved, I said. You might have a few more moments where you can see and hear us. I will miss you, Damon and Saynt, Joe said with tears in her eyes. Thank you for everything. Saynt was openly crying. Sheesh, now I had tears in my eyes too. Try to be good, Joe, but don't be all good, or you'll end up like him, I said, pointing to Saynt. Saynt gave a dorky smile, which made Joe giggle. Joe then rubbed her eyes. Damon, Saynt, I can't see you anymore. Are you still there? Goodbye, Josephine, I whispered, but she didn't reply. We will be around whenever you need us. She couldn't hear us now either. Maybe it was a good thing, because she would have blasted me for calling her Josephine. What now? Saynt asked. His voice was rough from crying. Guess we will have to find the other corrupted scales, I said.
I wonder what the other humans would be like, Saynt said. I hope they are nice.
I doubt that. So, Saynt, I guess we got ourselves extra assignments on Earth, I asked. We will work together a while longer.
It would seem so, Saynt replied, smiling. What do we do while we wait?
Want to go see what Mr. Whiskers is doing? I asked.
Yes, please,
Saynt replied. Let's go, my friend, I said. I linked our arms together as we went to see Saynt's favorite cat. Saynt and I had both chosen our new workplace to be Earth. We will stay here until we replace all the corrupted scales. I just hope we can do it without being caught. The end. Thank you for reading Divine Terror, Divine Error, Book 2. Written by Aisha Urooj. Narrated and produced by Ash Kelley. Copyright 2022, Aisha Urooj. Production copyright by Aisha Urooj.